Olives New Zealand has helped olive growers make significant gains in production and aims to further increase the market share of New Zealand-produced extra virgin olive oil. A series of industry-backed projects is largely responsible for this. A sustainable farming fund and a sustainable food and fibres futures program have contributed to the olive industry's efforts.
Whilst New Zealand consumes around 4 million litres of extra virgin olive oil annually, less than 10% of that is produced locally. Conversely, we've got around 350,000 trees, according to the Olives New Zealand census, which are capable of producing over 1 million litres of extra virgin olive oil. We were aware that there was potential to increase the production across the groves in New Zealand, and following the methodologies that we had, which were coming out of Europe and Australia, we were really not getting the production that we felt we should be. So we were getting less than 10 kgs of fruit per tree. We thought we should actually be getting up to 3 times that. So the first Focus Grove project was to increase the production, and our target at that point was 15 kgs a tree. At the suggestion of the Ministry of Primary Industries, we focused on 2 strategies rather than a scattergun approach, because if we had a scattergun approach, we wouldn't be able to identify what worked and what didn't. So the 2 strategies that we looked at were canopy management and disease management. The aim with the project was to increase production to 15 kgs per tree, and over the 3.5 years of the project we actually increased production to 25 kgs a tree. So that was through those 2 main areas that we looked at. The first project was funded by MPI jointly with industry. It was funded under the Sustainable Farming Fund. And also the Focus Groves themselves were required to invest significantly in the plant and to follow the recommendations.
There's too much stuff lying out laterally.
The project revolved around using 2 project consultants. The first project consultant had a scientific or research background with proven increases in orchard production. That was from Plant and Food Research, Stuart Tustin. And the other consultant that we used was actually an industry expert who had not only olive industry but also broader orchard industry experience. So they were both able to bring to our project methodologies that worked in other crops that we could trial in the olive groves.
The first impressions were that we had a horticultural crop which was not being managed commercially as a horticultural crop. It was in many cases something else. And horticultural crops need management for both staying healthy and the trees being managed in a way which is going to keep them productive. Tree health issues were to do with 2 wet weather fungus diseases, Cercospora and peacock spot, very similar to the problem of black spot in apples. Wet weather diseases which require fungicide treatments. And the structural problems of the trees were that generally they were getting no pruning management whatsoever, so trees were just becoming older and larger and more diseased. What we did was really tried to identify how olives are similar to other fruit crops that we are familiar with, and they're remarkably similar to other stone fruit crops. So their general flowering and cropping behaviour is almost the same as a peach or a nectarine or a plum, and that means that for crop every year they have to make enough new vegetative growth the prior season. So in other words, what is grown this year will have the flowers and the fruit next year. When you have a canopy which is not being managed or pruned, what happens is you get very little growth, and that's made even worse when you have disease issues which cause the leaves to fall off, and so that reduces growth even more. And so we had a classic problem of low cropping, but also crops really only every 2nd year. 1 year to grow some growth to fruit, and then that fruited next year but stopped more growth. So very unhealthy canopies which were really not very productive at all.
Leafy Ridge Olives in Wairarapa is one of a number of growers and oil producers involved in the Focus Grove project.
This is remarkable. I mean, look at the fruit up there.
Amazing amount of fruit there. We bought this land in 1999. We planted over 3 years. The first 700 trees we planted in what we call the front field. Then the middle field was another 1,000 trees, and then the back field was another 2,000 trees. In addition to that, I look after a neighbour's 600 odd trees, and another neighbour's planted another 2,000 trees, which I also look after. So I've probably got about 6,000 trees under my belt of varying ages, from 19 years to 3 years. We were approached by the executive as the largest, we're not the oldest grove in the Wairarapa, but we're certainly the largest grove, and we've continued to become bigger. So they needed a grove that was prepared to set aside the resources, the time, the effort, and we were pretty committed to it. We'd gone through a period of the trees becoming mature, giving fruit, and then suddenly running out of steam. And that was really worrying. And it wasn't for lack of effort. We were doing all the spraying that we thought we should do, but what became apparent was that it wasn't being done scientifically. So we jumped at the opportunity to be part of the Focus Grove, because that set out to really set a benchmark for a way that you could grow olives in New Zealand. I believe there's a huge potential for the olive oil industry to expand in New Zealand and to grow, because it's a wonderful product that we make, and surprisingly, not everybody associates New Zealand with olive oil, but we make some fantastic olive oil. And I do a lot of tastings for people, and it's always good to see the reaction when you do the tastings, and especially when you give them different varieties. And it's becoming a little bit like wine, where they just thought olive oil was olive oil, and now all of a sudden you're saying, well, this is a fruity one, this is a more peppery one, this has got high polyphenols, that's got low polyphenols. And people are actually getting attuned to it, and I just see it growing more and more.
Thanks, New Zealand On Air.